Nigel Farage, this survey shows what people have long suspected. UKIP is a party dominated by Conservatives, disgruntled Conservatives.
Well, what it shows is that our elected councillors, our successes, came predominantly in the southeast of England and in the east of England. So where we broke through this year were in predominantly Conservative areas. After all, these were shire elections that were taking place on May the 2nd. So it's no surprise to me that 70% of that particular survey had previously been Conservative supporters. You know, had you gone to Barnsley or Rotherham or Middlesbrough or any of those by-elections in which UKIP's been coming, or South Shields, in which UKIP's been coming second in very safe Labour seats in by-elections, you would have found there the vast majority of our voters had actually come from a Labour Party. So it does depend a bit what part of the country you go to.
Yes, but the area where the survey was done is not entirely a Labour-free area, and you've said that you caused, quote, an upwelling of support from people across the political spectrum. That's just wrong. You draw your support overwhelmingly from disgruntled Tories.
Well, if you go to South Shields, a constituency in which we'd never stood before, a place that has been solid Labour, where they've weighed the vote for 100 years, in a very short by-election, we went from 0 to 25%, and most of those votes were coming from Labour voters. If you look at the European elections of 2009, the areas in which we came first, places like Hull, where UKIP was topping the poll, places like Rotherham, where we recently won a district council by-election in one of the safest Labour wards in the whole of Rotherham, and you'll see that in those Labour areas we're making progress, and I think that Mr Miliband's decision this week, not at this stage anyway, to back a referendum on EU membership, means that, you know, we will be attacking the Labour vote more and more over the course of the next few months.
But if you look at the views of your councillors, I mean, robust right-wing views on immigration, capital punishment, climate change, it's clear your party's hoovered up Tories from the right of the Conservative Party.
Well, clearly, if we go to East Anglia or the southeast of England, you will find many traditional Conservatives who look at David Cameron, who seems to be prioritising gay marriage, climate change and keeping the foreign aid budget as high as possible, and they look at that and they say we can't vote Conservative. We look at the UKIP manifesto and we say, well, actually, at least there are some things that we agree with. And yes, you know, it's quite true that most UKIPers have got robust views on immigration, but they're sensible views on immigration. You know, we used to have 30 to 50,000 people a year would come to live, work and settle in this country. Over the last 10 years, it's been 500,000 most years, and what we're saying is the time has come to get a grip and to get control, and actually that appeals right across the political spectrum to people because it's just plain common sense.
But it looks like the main function at the next election of UKIP will be to deprive the Tories of votes and therefore of seats.
Well,
so how does it feel to be Ed Miliband's best hope of getting to number 10?
Yeah, well, look, you've got your briefing and you're clearly going to stick to it, and nothing I say is going to change your mind. I'll have one last try, all right? When we had the Eastleigh by-election back in the late winter this year, the headlines the next day were UKIP deprived Tories of the seat. After that, Lord Ashcroft spent a considerable sum of money finding out who were the UKIP voters, where had they come from, and what were the key issues, what were the key reasons why they'd voted UKIP. And I'm very thankful to Lord Ashcroft for saving us having to do it. And what we saw was a third of our vote in Eastleigh came from the Tories, a third of our vote in Eastleigh came from the Lib Dems, 20% came from Old Labour, and 10% came from people who had not voted for anybody for 20 years, but felt with UKIP they could re-engage with the process. The answer to your question is very simple. Of course we're picking up Tory votes. Of course there's huge disenchantment in Cameron, and many people believe the guy's not a Conservative at all. But overall, the majority of our votes come to us from parties other than the Conservative Party. This is not a splinter group on the right of the Conservative Party. This is a new national party, not hidebound by political correctness, prepared to stand up and say things that everybody else has tried to brush under the carpet for decades, and we're here to stay.
Well, if you're a kind of a threat to all the parties, including Labour, why do you think it is that Stuart Wood, he's a key figure in Ed Miliband's inner circle, he says that you should be allowed to join the pre-election debates? Now, I think we could discount him wanting to do that because he's a fan of yours. It's because he knows you'll split the Tory vote and let Labour in.
Well, again, you're sticking to the script, and that's fine if you want to do that. I'm I keep repeatedly telling you that we pick up more votes from across the spectrum than we do just from the Conservative Party. That's a fact. It's very well documented, and yet nobody inside the London metropolitan media mindset wants to accept it. We seem to think that believing Britain should govern itself and have a trade relationship with Europe and not be part of political union, we seem to believe that is somehow right-wing. Remember, it was the Labour Party. It was the left of the Labour Party in the 70s and the 80s, even Neil Kinnock at one time, who believed in that view. As for the TV debates, look, they're a long way away. I know that everybody is talking about the general election and what may or may not happen, but I would like to remind viewers that on May the 22nd next year, we have a national election, we have a European election, every single one of us is entitled to vote, and we also on that day have over 5,000 council seats up for grabs.
All right.
If UKIP is able, on May the 22nd, to win the European elections, then I think keeping us out of the pre-election debates in 15 would look slightly ridiculous.
Just, do you agree with your councillors in our survey that Britain today is a worse place because of immigration?
I think that what has happened to Britain since 1997, with totally, frankly, unrestricted, excessive immigration, has had a negative effect on society. You know, we have 1 million of our youngsters now out of work, and yet we're prepared to open up the doors next January to the whole of Bulgaria and Romania. That doesn't make sense.
So immigrants have made Britain a worse place, Mr. Farage. Immigration's made Britain a worse place.
I think British market towns and cities have become far more divided communities over the course of the last 15 years than they were before, and I'm sorry about that.
All right. Mr. Farage, do you listen to Drenge?
Sorry?
Do you listen to Drenge? Okay. It's a group that Mr. Tom Watson said he listened to and recommended that Ed Miliband should listen to as well. I just wondered if you did. But clearly from the look on your face, you didn't. No. You don't. Okay. Thank you very much. That's Nigel Farage. I'm from a rather puzzled...